I've got one question I wanted to ask you,
Sure.
stand-up wise, and it's probably one you've answered before and you might be a bit bored of. But I'm really interested in it as a stand-up fan and a comic myself. Coming up in the UK and your early work, like Alcohol Holocaust and stuff like that, you were sort of, you developed a reputation as a comic who sort of pulled no punches and was on that side of the comedy spectrum.
Sure.
And then the gun control stuff is, to the untrained eye, seen as the total opposite side of that.
Yeah.
And I imagine that sort of affected who was coming to see your shows. And I wanted to know what that was like to have, like, the lefties who would traditionally not have necessarily been a Jim Jefferies fan now go, I'm going to go and see this guy. He's got the same opinion as me.
What's happened to me is, and look, I used to give more of a fuck about this, but I don't really. As long as people are still showing up to me shows, it doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? But the extreme left and the extreme right fucking hate me on both sides. On both sides. So the extreme right because of the gun thing. The left like me because of the gun thing, but because of the misogynistic jokes and all that type of stuff, think I'm a fucking pig. And so I feel like I'm just in the silent majority. The middle,
I think that's where the comic's meant to be as well.
And it's just also, it's one of these things, it's like, I can have an opinion on guns, and that doesn't mean that I can't. But what happened, my audience showed up, and there was a lot, I'd have to say on the next, because the next tour was all just cock jokes for whatever reason, because that's just what I was writing that year, you know? And I was like, so I'm coming out cunt fuck, and all this type of stuff. And then they're like, well, this is nothing like the gun. There was about 2 or 3 years there where I was shocking audiences again, like I was just showing up at a comedy club. And I was like, you people have come. And what upset me about that is, you didn't even watch the whole special.
They watched
you watched that 15-minute clip, and you didn't watch the whole fucking... Because the next routine is me dragging myself along the ground as Oscar Pistorius without legs after he shot his girlfriend, and me saying that he should have because good-looking girls have been getting away with shit for too long. Like, it got pretty dark. And then he goes up to the safe and he was going to get his guns, and then he puts his legs on, and then, you know... Like that, if you just watched that bit, you would have gotten the sort of feel for the whole thing.
They need to watch the whole thing. They need to watch the 3 minutes after the gun control bit.
Yeah, you just got to watch the next bit. There's a callback in it. That's horrendous. And so I'll tell you how I wrote the gun bit. Right, the gun bit was all written over the course of 3 days, and then it was completely written. So I had my sitcom legit, and in the sitcom was John Ratzenberg, really nice guy, super right-wing guy. American fella. You'll know him as Norm from Cheers, right?
Okay.
And Hemi the pig from Toy Story. You know, that sounded like more like Norm then.
Yeah.
But anyway, but so I'm sitting next to him when Sandy Hook happens. We're on set. Sandy Hook happens. We shut down production, and everyone just rushes to the table. It's one of those sort of 9/11-y type moments, you know. And we're like, "Fuck! All these kids are just being shot." And he turns to me and goes, "Hey, Jimmy, none of this would have happened if those teachers had guns. When will these liberals ever learn?" And I must have argued with him for 3 days. I was like, you can't be fucking serious, that blah, blah, blah. Why doesn't this happen in other countries? Blah, 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 blah. And it was just all arguments I had with the postman from Cheers.
Oh, my God.
And by the end of that, you've got every argument from the other side that you can reply to in your own bit.
I needed a person who was heavily into guns to be a friend of mine to chat with, or that routine never would have happened.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I would have just read things on the internet and they think this, or watch some video. I needed a person who I could actually chat to, who was the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
But like, look, he's a great guy. He's fucking one of the funniest cunts you'll ever. I had him. He was, like he doesn't like to buy fluorescent light bulbs because he calls them Obama bulbs because they're made by the Chinese government to fucking make the Chinese take over and all that type of stuff. So he goes to all the hardware. They don't make the ones with a filament anymore. They need to have a filament in there. Right? So he goes to the hardware stores and he stockpiles the old light bulbs because he reckons you can read better and these other Obama bulbs fuck you up, you know. And then the other person who played a dad in the show was, originally I wanted Paul Hogan to play my dad, right? Crocodile Dundee, right? And he said he would do it and then he pulled out at the last minute and I was like, we didn't have anyone cast play my dad. And then they went, do you want James Bond? So I had fucking George Lazenby, who is the only Australian to ever play James Bond, the only person to play James Bond for one movie. And fuck me.
Do you want James Bond to be your dad?
Yeah, I was like, fuck yeah, I want James Bond to be my dad. Fucking George hadn't worked since on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Hadn't worked since. And so he didn't even know about digital cameras. He's like, "This, how many fucking takes are we going to do? Surely we're out of film." And he was great. So, but if the Me Too movement was happening during on Her Majesty's Secret Service, the production would have been shut down because George fucked a lot of women, and he'll tell you every story. There's an article about George where they're doing around Australia, they've got an orchestra, the music of James Bond, right? So they're going to play all the classic Shirley Bassey songs and all that, play the theme song, have the movie screens above it. They do these shows all the time. And so what they thought they'd do is they'd bring out George Lazenby to fucking be interviewed, as a guest for the show. But people would bring in their kids, right? And George Lazenby's like this, Ursula Andrews, fucked her. Like every single, I once said to him, I said, George, you ever fuck any Bond girls? And he goes, it'd be easier to tell you the ones I haven't fucked. He goes, they all come to the conventions. So he's the only James Bond who shows up at the conventions. The rest of them have got fucking careers. And so, like, he wouldn't be doing the top ones, and he wouldn't be doing them in their prime. This is like an 80-year-old Ursula Andrews, like on a whole lot of headshots on a Motel 6 in a fucking Albuquerque, right? But yeah, he once told me a story like this. The story went like this. He goes, it was the 60s. I was the #1 male model in the world. Picture it, boys. And so me, Dan Backett, and DJ Qualls are like, oh, this is a good story. And he goes, my dick's here. Peter Sellers' dick's here. John Lennon's dick's there. And there was naked women all over the floor. And then he just stops. And we went, and what happened? He goes, well, we fucked him, didn't we?